throne was feeding. It pulsed with roots veined through the marble floor, black and slick with sap that steamed where it touched the lethe pooling beneath the throne's base. Christopher Robin was no longer sitting. He was being held, consumed at the axis of royalty and rot, his spine arched back as if the very seat demanded supplication from his bones. Sleepnora hovered inches above the buckling stone, limbs loose like she hadn't remembered gravity yet. The banners swelled. Somewhere above, a lion opened its mouth and wept moss. The walls were breathing with nourishment. That was the horror. The castle was eating and remembering at the same time, not emotionally, biologically, as if memory had a caloric value and Christopher was a particularly dense meal. The floor groaned beneath Sleepnora's feet as she approached. A crack split through the tiles between them, wide enough to see water glinting below. A lake hidden beneath the foundation, black and breathless. His mouth opened like it had to learn how.
Rue, is that you?
He said, and the name came out cracked. Half recognition, half forgetting, like a splinter of something warm trying to survive beneath centuries of frost. Christopher gasped. Sleepnora's hand found his cheek before her breath could. She wasn't hovering now. She was shaking. Not from magic, not from fear, but from all the words she had meant to say when they still had time.
Christopher, I was going to tell you.
Her words were earnest now, emotions on her sleeve. An army of words besieged by regret before even leaving her lips.
Back then, when we carved stories into bark and said it made us knights, I was going to tell you.
His eyes, still his, searched hers like a drowning boy, looking for a surface that might still be sky.
It's quite all right. Don't you cry. I'm here. Why don't you tell me now?
He breathed, but the throne did not wait. And then the rest came. His skin split like bark, not blood, not scream. Just the slow, agonizing peel of human shape into something arboreal. The bones of his fingers twisted into gauntlets of moss-flecked bronze. Antlers cracked from his scalp in stuttering bursts.
I'm sorry.
Bloodless but shivering with memory. His voice came next, low and rusted, like something that had been spoken too many times before, and now refused to come out clean.
I am the leaf who remembered to eat his shadows,
he said, and his voice was doubled. One part child, one part night.
I am the root that remembers where the sword was buried, just as Azathoth commands it.
The castle howled, and the throne screamed and the floor buckled beneath them. The chamber was tall, narrow, and pointed, like it had grown upward instead of being built. Walls whispered with old stone and sap lines. The smell wasn't dust or decay, but parchment that had once been sung to. At the end stood Morgana. She did not sit. She waited, spine straight, cloak coiled like smoke that had chosen to rest on her shoulders instead of fade. Her hair was made of midnight, beautiful as the gaping maw of a black hole. When she spoke, the room didn't echo. It bowed.
I am Morgane of Avalon,
she said, every vowel deliberate, every pause shaped like a throne.
daughter of Artorius, sister to Ruin, steward of oath and blade. Ye three enter under no heraldry, bear no crest, speak no tongue of court, yet seek passage. If so, prove thy purpose. Bring me the Grail, or be consumed by the flame of ambition.
Alice's mouth parted.
Interesting. I assume that's the formal version of state your business. very welcoming.
Thou enterest unbidden, nameless and bare, yet wouldst speak with casual tongue. This is no court of laughter. This is the bone beneath the throne. This is not a parley, it is approving. Fail to name the Grail, and this chamber shall forget thee.
Sleepnora leaned in.
Did she say we don't have a crest? Is that something we were supposed to bring?
A crest is actually just part of a coat of arms.
She said, keeping her voice steady.
It's how old families used to advertise their bloodlines. Shields, animals, swords, graphic design with delusions of nobility. The more violent your history, the fancier the embroidery.
So, a resume, but angrier.
And usually embroidered by terrified peasants.
Pooh raised a paw politely.
Excuse me, ancient riddle lady. If it helps, I once carried a very nice lunchbox with bees on it. It had a kind of noble seal.
Morgana regarded him with the same expression one might reserve for a diplomatic envoy who'd arrived in swimwear.
Thou mocketh me, or speaketh in riddles thy own minds comprehend not. The Grail,
She repeated.
is the vessel that testeth the soul, not made of gold, but wrought of cost. Bring it forth, or be unmade by the silence where it ought to rest.
Pooh looked genuinely hurt.
We're trying very hard, ancient riddle lady. This is just our native dialect of mild confusion and polite rambling.
Ooh, she's not mocking us. We're just from a different kind of narrative, and it's throwing her off a bit.
Morgana turned her gaze to Alice.
And thou, Knight of Doubt, art thou interpreter of this chaos?
Unfortunately.
Morgana studied her a beat longer, then asked.
From whence hail ye?
Alice glanced sideways at Pooh. Pooh leaned toward her.
Alice, do you think storybook sounds too flippant?
Well, I don't think saying our origins were penned by a children's book author is going to go over well.
You're right, it needs to sound more dignified, something Master Cthulhu would say.
Pooh raised a paw.
We're from a forest, not a fancy one. Just trees and bees and snacks mostly.
Alice leaned over to Pooh and whispered.
That was perfect. Much better than me trying to explain Wonderland like a fever dream with etiquette problems.
Morgana's gaze sharpened, as if more of herself and individuality were taking seat. The weight and freedom of choice taking the reins.
Then jesters of the forest know this, and know it well,
She said, each word heavy with architecture.
Had I followed the script written into my marrow, thy bodies would already be ash upon these tiles. And if not returned to the ground, you would be no sharper of wit than these Spartan knights.
A beat.
Not for impudence, not for heresy, but for answering a riddle with laughter and naming sandwiches where saints once bled.
Her voice dropped, slow and exact.
I do not spare thee from mercy. I spare thee because scrubbing thy scorch marks from the stone would be tedious.
Another pause.
And because I am strong enough to refuse the voice that commands me from the throne. Hades set me here to test, to punish, to burn those who break the cadence.
She looked away briefly, eyes distant, then back to them with steel.
And because a goddess of pomegranates once walked beside me, crowned not in flame but in flowers pressed beneath centuries, she too bore the weight of endless trial, and a bear walked with her through forgetting, taught her how to stay herself beneath the script.
Morgana's eyes found Pooh, not with gratitude, but with recognition.
She lent me that memory. I have held it ever since.
Morgana turned from them, the weight of her words reminding them of their purpose in Camelot and the spreading corruption.
It is true.
She said,
The mercy I grant is mine. The soul I keep is mine. But the throne still names me steward to Hades' beck and call.
She looked to the throne, not longing, not anger, but out of forced contract like an arranged marriage.
I am still bound by the hand of Hades. Though I do not burn thee, I must still test thee. The Grail remains the gate. Its riddle must be answered.
She turned back to them. Her eyes, clearer now, held no cruelty, only burden.
Not for my sake, but for yours. The castle does not know how to open without question, and the question of the riddle remains.
Alice sighed.
We're doing our best, I promise. This is just how we work.
Morgana studied them again, this time not as intruders, but as anomalies, disruptive, effective. The Grail trial required solemnity. They were proving immune. Morgana's last word hung in the air like a sword that hadn't decided whether to fall. Sleepnora hovered lower. Her feet didn't land, but the weight in her voice did.
You remember that night?
She said, eyes still closed.
At the gate, the one you talked to.
Pooh didn't answer, but he shifted slightly, like someone turning over a stone in memory, unsure what might crawl out.
You told him he didn't belong here.
Sleepnora said.
And for a second, something cracked. The loop faltered. He even remembered his son.
Alice exhaled, too sharply to be casual, too measured to be panic.
That's a solid point. Maybe we can undo Morgana's loop the same way?
She asked. Sleepnora tilted midair.
Not undo, distract, confuse the cadence, make her laugh.
She did say the script thing from Hades wants her to burn us,
He said. Pooh reached into the empty air like he was testing the weather for something warmer.
Might be worth getting her to forget that part.
I'm not sure this will work.
Well, it's what we have, though.
Sleepnora said. They moved, not in formation, but in agreement. Then Sleepnora lifted one hand, not high, not waving, just high enough to suggest she was about to ask a question inappropriate for scripture.
So, logistics question. Is this a retrieve the ancient cup kind of deal? Or more of a describe it with dramatic flair and hope for a partial credit situation?
Sleepnora twirled slowly in the air like a question mark that hadn't settled.
So, does it have to be made of metal, or will something like a sacred ceramic count?
Morgana's expression convulsed. Alice followed, expression unreadable.
Can it be touched barehanded? Or do you need some kind of chosen mitt?
Pooh lifted his paw.
And what happens if you accidentally take it to the wrong pantheon? Like, if you wander into Asgard with it, does it explode?
Morgana looked around, possibly searching for a window to throw herself out of. Sleepnora continued, undeterred.
Is it dishwasher compatible?
Only on the sacred cycle.
I don't think my dishwasher has a sacred cycle.
Pooh said softly. There was a sound from Morgana, sharp, soft, somewhere between a cough and a prayer aborting mid-spell. Alice kept going.
Let's say you bring the Grail to a festival honoring a false idol who just really likes mugs. Is that theft, blasphemy, or just poor scheduling?
Morgana's hands moved, not casting a spell, just covering her face. Pooh stepped delicately forward.
Hypothetically, if the Grail were a sandwich, what kind of mustard would still be allowed within the prophecy?
That did it. Morgana lowered her hands, her shoulders shaking, not from rage, from something more ancient, something defeated. She laughed. She looked up, and for the first time, there was laughter behind her eyes.
This chamber, no longer marble-hearted, relents.
She said at last, voice quieter than before, but shaped still in the grammar of queens.
You all did something. For laughter hast thou given me, not as jest, but as key, that I could still laugh. 'Twas proof I had not wholly become the script, and for that
She said, voice steady now, shaped like ceremony reclaimed.
I give thanks, not as queen, nor warden, but as woman, who hath not yet forgotten the sound of her own will. Thy trial is broken. The test lies shattered beneath thy heresies.
She turned slowly toward the far wall, the one yet untouched.
But the throne remains.
The words hit the floor like coins from an empty purse.
There is a boy beyond.
She spoke wearily, more seer than goddess for the moment.
A child cloaked in crown and prophecy. He speaketh not as king, but as echo. He recites, as I did, as all of us did, long past the age of meaning.
Her gaze swept over them, not as judge but as weary witness. Her eyes held no fire now, only the dust of repetition.
He calleth himself Arthur, or was told to. I know not. The story fed him that name, and he hath chewed it for centuries.
Sleepnora hovered lower. Alice's hands dropped from their guard. Even Pooh, who met most dangers with soft resolve, went very still.
But the throne is not of Hades alone.
Morgana went on.
Nay, it is carved with deeper glyphs, entropic hands. There is a god behind that seat whose mouth hath never closed.
The chamber felt colder, though no wind stirred.
I may open the path, but I am not permitted beyond it. The will of the throne doth not suffer me. I am known to it, and thus unworthy.
She lifted her hand, not high, not with flourish, just enough. The rear wall exhaled. Roots unwound from themselves like tired serpents, and stone folded inward like an old blossom. A doorway revealed itself, arched not in glory, but in relinquishment. Morgana stepped aside. Her shadow, long tethered to the throne's dais, peeled free without sound.
I was crafted to test thee.
She said, words trembling beneath their cadence.
But mayhap I was also waiting to be bested, to be broken well.
She turned to Pooh, not in deference but with something more rare.
Bear of odd wisdom, walk gently. The boy is not thy enemy. He is simply still dreaming the name they gave him.
Pooh inclined his head.
What becomes of you now?
He asked. Morgana paused, looked to the place where the riddle had once been.
I do not know,
She said, and for once the formality slipped.
but I think I shall enjoy not knowing. The Grail is no longer thy burden,
she stated.
but truth awaits thee still, and truth bears no etiquette. Walk wisely.
Through the door into the hall they went, and sealed behind them. Silence returned.
Fenglui Mugglewanaf, Cthulhu the Librarian, Wagahnagel Fitagna.